Zoning appeal for September 27th, 2021. Microphone's on. Oh, sorry, Mr. Foster. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a second. All right. First item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes from September 13th. So moved. Motion by Mr. Fuller, second by Mrs. Peters. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Any special requests or continuances? No. Seeing none, we'll move on to findings of fact. I'll take a motion for BCA 2021-016.
Chairman, in consideration of statutory criteria, I move that we adopt the written findings of fact as presented, incorporating the evidence submitted into the record as our final decision, final action for variance petition number BZA 2021-016.
Motion by Ms. Peters, second by Mr. Polar. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. There's no old business. Any old business from the floor? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. The first item on the agenda will be BZA 2021-010. Request from Shane and Marisol Toland for, actually it's for what, 1469 West County Line Road. And then you also have a dimensional variance, BZA 2021-019, which will be second on the agenda. So we'll hear both of yours back to back, or whoever is. Mr. Mrs. Marisol, Mr. and Mrs. Toland, I apologize. Okay, so first up is a request for a use variance to allow conversion of a single family residence to be converted into use as an attorney's office. The petitioners use only. All those wishing to speak for or against, please stand and be sworn in by our secretary.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm to perjury to testify in this truth and justice?
If you would approach the podium, make sure the microphone is on, and whoever wishes to start can tell us why you're here.
Good afternoon. My name is Shane Toland, my wife Marisol Toland. We are applying for a use variance to use the premises that we've recently purchased at 1469 West County Line Road as an office. I'm an attorney. I also do some mediations and sorts of general business consulting. And the premises basically would be ideally suited for an office. The traffic on County Line Road is, as you all are aware, has gotten pretty bad. And it's actually pretty noisy out there when we're out in the front working on things. And would make, like, again, an ideal location for a small office. The plan, as you can see from our drawings there, is to put in a wheelchair ramp to the front door to make it handicap accessible, and then also to put in some parking. The garage, which is sorry about that. The garage, which has been partially demolished now at this point, we're going to move it back where it currently where the garage previously sat. There's really not room to turn around and to be able to pull out on County Line Road. So the idea is to move the garage further back in the yard so that then we can have ample space for parking and for people to be able to turn around, and that way they can pull in and turn around and pull out directly onto County Line Road. I've spoken with a couple of the neighbors, and they all seem to be thrilled with the idea because, like I said, it will pretty much be less invasive than if we were living there full time. We're pretty much just there, Monday through Friday for business hours, and we don't have a ton of traffic or anything like that. So I jokingly said we've got much less traffic coming into our office than at our home with 2 teenagers and all their friends. So, any questions I can answer on any of that, or I can go into more detail?
Yeah, so we'll save questions from the board till after the public part of the hearing. Do you have your staff report and the statement of reasons that you submitted?
I believe I have that over here.
Yeah, if you want to grab, we need to read them into the record, so I'll go through them with you. If you want to
Okay.
answer them, we'll want to answer them verbally into the record.
Okay,
So if you want to grab them, you can go through them.
great.
This is where you have the criteria 1 through 5 here.
Yeah, is that the,
Yeah, the statements of reason to start on page
What?
2. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community because it starts with that.
oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, if you can read your response to that.
Yeah, I wrote, if approved, there will likely be less traffic than for many families. A law firm will benefit the area and nearby residents. The structure will not be significantly altered in a way that would clash with the neighbors. And if approved, I will improve the existing parking and provide a way to turn around. Right now having to back out on versus right now having to back out on a busy street.
Okay. Number 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because.
Yeah, except for a sign, the neighbors would hardly even notice. An office will enhance the area. The property 2 parcels west is commercial. Much of County Line Road is already being converted to commercial/office use. And many nearby properties are likely being used as home businesses or at least to store business vehicles already.
Okay. Number 3, the need for the variance arises from some condition peculiar to the property involved
Because of the increased traffic on County Line Road, this particular property would actually be better suited for an office than for a family because of safety concerns. If the variance is granted, I will move the garage, create parking and a safe way to exit on the County Line Road.
Number 4, the strict application of the terms of zoning ordinance will constitute an unusual and unnecessary hardship if applied to the property for which the variance is sought because.
This is a 70-year-old home. The home has fallen into disrepair and will need substantial investment to repair. And allowing the variance will make the investment profitable for me in the long term. And I will invest substantially more than if I have to simply repair the property and sell it for a loss or keep it as a rental.
Okay. And number 5, the approval does not interfere substantially with the comprehensive plan because.
Much of this area has similar uses. This business is quiet and non-invasive. It will not create substantial traffic. The use would be basically already permitted as a home office or at least go unnoticed, but for a sign that we want to have.
And you've seen the summary, the proposed conditions by the staff. There are 3 of them. 1, the exterior of the principal building shall remain residential in character. 2, the detached garage shall be used only as an accessory storage building for the converted office use. And 3, the final configuration of the site plan, including parking and landscape, shall be reviewed and approved through the application for an issuance of a land alteration permit.
Yes,
And you're okay with all of those?
yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add? If not, anyone wishing to speak against or as a remonstrator?
Neil Davis, planning director. This isn't necessarily against, but just to add on to what you were reading about the staff report. Staff does find this isn't significantly changing the character of the area since it is the existing home. And the petitioner is aware of their need for a commercial site plan review, at which point we'll look at the parking lot layout and everything of that nature. Property is still zoned residential, so there would be no buffering or anything like that to go with that in terms of landscape to go with that review. So I wanted to make that clarification.
Okay. Davis. There's nothing else, and I'll close the public hearing and open up to questions from the board. Public hearing is closed. I'll open it up to the board. Speaks.
No questions.
Mr. Fuller,
No question.
Mr. Foster,
No questions.
and Mr. King.
No questions.
Still getting some last name. I have no questions. I don't, well, I guess, so just to clarify that I heard right, this, you will not be living there as well. It will simply be a business.
Correct. It'll simply be an office. It's, I think, 720 square foot. So it's a pretty small little office.
Then I have no further questions. Are all the notices and receipts in order?
Yes,
And the certified copy of the Unified Development Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan are also in the file.
Motion to accept all the evidence in the record.
Chairman, I recommend. I move that we submit all the evidence presented in regard to this matter, including the notices, receipts, maps, photographs, written documents, petitioner's application and attachments, petitioner's detailed statement of reasons, the staff report prepared by the planning department, certified copies of the Unified Development Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan, testimony of petitioner, city planning staff, and any remonstrators, and all other exhibits presented, be they oral or written, for consideration by this board in regard to this petition, and to include the testimony of those present this evening.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Peters, second by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. I will take a motion on, actually, can I ask a question of the staff, one more question, or is it too late?
Well, it depends on the nature of the question. Is it a procedural thing or
No, it's just, it was a question that I just thought of on citizen resident. One thing I heard, I wanted to clarify. If it remained a live-in home, they could still run an in-home business, just wouldn't be allowed to sign. Is that correct?
and it's also related to the percentage of the property that can be used for the use or home occupations. Limits the square footage to, I believe, 20% of the home square footage, which in the case of this 700 square foot home would be 140 square feet.
Okay. Thank you. All right, I'll take a motion on the docket itself.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request with the 3 conditions from the planning, or from the planning department, right?
staff report?
And the
And
staff.
staff report, sorry. And that was a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Fuller, second by Mrs. Peters to approve with the 3 conditions of staff report. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, motion to adopt written findings of fact.
Chairman, having considered the statutory criteria, I move that we direct the Corporation Counsel's Office to draft written findings of fact regarding our decision on the variance petition presented, the variance petition number BZA 2021-010. Said findings to specifically incorporate the staff report and the evidence submitted into the report for consideration and adoption by the Board of Zoning Appeals as our final decision and final action regarding this petition at our next meeting.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Peters, second by Mr. Fuller. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. All right, Mr. Tillman, we will move on to docket 2021-019. This is for the approval of installation of a ground sign in conjunction with the use variance that was just passed to permit the office use in a residential zone. The sign is to be approximately 22 square feet in face area, mounted on a masonry base, 58 inches tall, 72 inches wide at its widest point, and will not be illuminated and will meet required setback distances from front and sidelines. Is there anyone additional that wishes to speak to this specific docket before we get started? Seeing none, then do I need to have this sworn in again?
You said you were combining both of the
Okay.
presentations, so I don't think he has to.
Okay,
Because he's already taken the oath.
perfect. Then Mr. Tolan, tell us why you're here for this particular docket.
You want me to start at the statutory requirements?
If you wish, if you would like to give a little bit of a overview beyond what I just did first, we can do that. Otherwise, we can jump right to it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, basically, I mean, you hit the nail on the head in terms of what sign we want. A sign will make it easier for clients to see my location from a distance and to avoid the need for sudden stopping as they get close, figure out they're at the address. Again, it will not be lit, it will not be overly large. I don't see it as any type of distraction for traffic, but more or less, like I said, to make it safer for visitors. Hopefully large enough to give you some business that people drive through and want to do a will or something. But
And just to be clear, that was your answer for number one, which the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community.
yes, sir.
Okay. And then number two, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because
Allowing the use of the premises as an office will increase the property value. And office will actually be quieter and less intrusive than a residential use.
And number three, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because
A sign will be necessary to identify the business and to make the business safe and easy to locate. The lack of the sign would largely defeat the purpose of the use variance.
and number four, I will take, which is structure is not regulated under Indiana Code 8-21-10-3 for hazard air navigation. The staff has two recommendations on this one, which is two conditions. Approval of sign permit shall be subject to approval of the use rates of docket BZA 2021-10, which we just approved. And number two, the monument sign shall substantially conform to the size, height, and style of the exhibit submitted with this petition.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else, and Mr. Davis? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on this. Open it up to the board. Vicky?
No questions?
Mr. Fuller?
No question.
Mr. Foster?
No questions.
Mr. King? No questions. I have none. All the evidence again is in order, I assume, or all the receipts and notices?
Yes.
And the certified copy of the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, and the comprehensive plan are also in that file.
I'll take that motion to accept them into the record.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that we admit all the evidence presented in regard to this matter, including the notices, receipts, maps, photographs, written documents, petitioner's application and attachments, petitioner's detailed statement of reasons, the staff report prepared by the planning department, certified copies of the Unified Development Ordinance and comprehensive plan, testimony of the petitioner, city planning staff, and any remonstrators, and all other exhibits presented, be they oral or written, for consideration by this board in regard to this petition, and to include the testimony of those present this evening.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Fuller, second by Mrs. Peters. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. I'll take a motion on the docket itself.
Let me break it.
Chairman, I recommend that we approve the application with the two conditions indicated in the staff report.
A motion,
Second.
second by Mr. Foster. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries to approve with the two conditions in the staff report. I'll take a motion to adopt written findings of fact.
Mr. Chairman, having considered the statutory criteria, I move that we direct the Corporation Counsel's Office to draft written findings of fact regarding our decision on the variance requested, presented in variance petition number BZA 2021-019. Said findings to specifically incorporate the staff report and the evidence submitted into the record for consideration and adoption by the Board of Zoning Appeals as our final decision and final action regarding this petition at our next meeting.
Second.
Motion by Mr. King, second by Mr. Fuller. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. You are good to proceed. We will take final action in 2 weeks at our next meeting, but we have to work with the planning staff or the staff department, planning staff, and get things going.
Great, thank you all very much.
Good luck.
All right, next up is BZA 2021-20, use variance request from Mr. William and Deborah Asher at 1288 Griffith Road. Use variance to expand a dump truck business by over 20% on the back third of the property. All those wishing, and then we will also combine this one similarly with docket BZA 2021-017. So all those wishing to speak to either of those, please stand and raise your right hand and be sworn in by our secretary.
You swear no penalties of perjury, testimony gives true confession.
All right, those wishing to start, please approach the podium. And name and address for the record, please.
I'm sorry.
Name and address for the record, please.
Bill and Debbie Ashler, 1288 Griffith Road, Greenwood.
Tell us why you're here.
We're here, we're asking for a use variance to be able to move our dump trucks. We have 10 acres now, and we run our business out of our home. The dump trucks are there currently, and we're asking to be able to move the dump trucks to the back third of our property, which would include building another structure, adding a drive down the north side of our property line that would lead to the back, so that we can get the dump trucks off of our personal driveway. And the new building would include obviously parking for the dump trucks, as well as we would add additional landscaping to try to make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible. The intent would be to put the landscaping, you know, there's already a lot back there anyway with tree lines. We would add additional landscaping to try to hide everything back there.
Anything else to add before we go through the statement of reasons like we did previously?
I don't think so. I think that covers the use portion.
Okay, then let's step through that. Do you have the statutory criteria answered? So number one, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because
All of our trucks are maintained by FMCSA standards, as well as all of our practices. We run a drug-free workplace that is monitored by DOT.
okay. Number two, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because
We already have commercial and industrial to the west of us. So our property butts up to commercial currently. And then to the north of us is agriculture.
number three, the need for the variance arises from some condition peculiar to the property involved because
Well, we really desire to keep our business close as possible, but yet further away from our home.
and number four, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will constitute an unusual and unnecessary hardship if applied to the property for which the variance is sought because
We've been looking around for some time. We've had a hard time finding something reasonable in price, obviously. And we need to stay in the general vicinity, the Greenwood Wineland area. And there just aren't a lot of options out there that meet our needs. And having the property right there available to us on our back third.
okay. And number five, the approval does not interfere substantially with the comprehensive plan because
The business will be located on the back of our property and will include landscaping mounds to help making everything aesthetically pleasing.
and you've seen the staff comments and also their recommendations should this be approved.
Yes, we have.
And those recommendations are, number one, the commercial site plan would be required. Number two, there should be no truck traffic between the hours of 8 PM and 8 AM. And number three, the variance shall be granted to the two of you, William and Deborah Asher only. It would not run with the land, and it would automatically be voided if there is change of ownership to the subject property, and it is not transferable to other persons. Anything else to add? Mr. Davis, I know you wish to speak as well.
Yes, thank you. So Dale Davis, planning director. And staff's comments are not reflective of the current business operation. We have had no complaints to deal with it. The The issue at hand, and why staff is not favorable towards this is an industrial business. It would be only permitted as a special exception in the industrial large zone. This is an agricultural zone. Griffith Road is developing residential currently. The industrial has not continued east. It was specifically not included with the previous rezone that was at Allen and Collins. So there is no industrial property along Griffith. Further to the south, there's actually two proposed subdivisions. One was the annexation that was withdrawn from Plan Commission last week, but they have an existing section of that neighborhood currently under construction on the other side of Griffith Road. So that is staff's rationale behind the use. The other issues at hand are, this is an industrial use. There are significant standards for developing an industrial property, given industrial architectural standards, water quality, mounding, buffering, just even the way that the driveway surface is prepared. Should this move forward, staff believes at a minimum, we need to review this according to industrial large standards, because that is what this type of a use would take. And so that would mean the landscape buffering for the entire property. That would mean coming up with a drainage report, going through all that. It's a lot of impervious area, and there's no drainage proposed. And there's currently a lot of impervious area. And I know it's proposed to be gravel. We just do not permit gravel in the city anymore. If anybody brought the use, be it residential or commercial or industrial, we would not permit gravel. And I think in this case, specifically with the trucks and the runoff and everything else, if we're starting to talk about doing attention, doing water quality, gravel is going to make that really difficult on those types of systems. So that part of the request would also be something that we're definitely unfavorable for. So that is staff's rationale. We do have concerns, because if you look at the industrial properties that are west of this site, I mean, those are the standards that they've all been held to.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. You have 5 minutes to respond. 5 minutes?
Yes.
5 minutes to respond to that if you like.
If it were to be approved, so we would be willing to pave everything if that was one of our options. That would not be a problem. The truck traffic hours between 8 and 8, that is a little late. Our trucks usually leave around 6 in the morning. The 8 PM at night probably would not be a problem. The drainage, yeah, having that all evaluated, that certainly would not be a problem to make sure that drainage would be sufficient. We do have a concern at number 3. Should it be approved? It's not being transferable in the future. I guess my question would be, down the road, if, when we retire, if our son would buy our house, who would probably be running the business at that time, then, the way this is written now, it would not be transferable.
Okay. Anything else to add?
No comments.
Close the public hearing. Open up to questions from the board. Ms. Peters?
Yes, my question's for the staff. Since it's currently being operated as a business, and all it, they are looking to move the housing of the units a little farther back on the land, Has there been any problem with drainage so far? Have we
I have
had
to-
any issues?
I have to check with our stormwater department if they have complaints, but the problem comes from, I mean, as soon as we get to an acre or more of disturbed area, which in this case we would, I mean, we need to go by the federal stormwater guidelines, and we're an MS4 community, so this is pretty important for us to follow. So regardless of if there's an issue or not, I mean, there's essentially mandates for us to follow.
So I guess my question is, if they didn't move the new building that far back, if it were up closer, since that's still within where they're at now, is that a problem? I mean, the only thing that was indicated is that they had before, but they're gonna expand by more than 20%.
I mean, if the new building was like fronting that existing gravel area that they have, you know, the stormwater capacity would not be something that stormwater would typically review, but they would put, have water quality put in. That would become a, again, as mentioned before, a little bit trickier, if not impossible, with gravel. Again, I'm not an engineer on that point, but stormwater always does require at a minimum water quality, which would be one of those physical structures to.
Right, and they're not down by water quality now, is what you're saying.
Correct.
So if they just left everything as status quo, they wouldn't have an issue.
Correct. I mean, this is a legal non-conforming use. It was in place before our zoning. So they could continue as is
Okay,
indefinitely.
okay.
But the, I think clarifying point is, and the staff report was written for this to be an expansion of the use. As presented today, it's a transfer of the use. So
That was the question I had, is how many trucks do you have today in production? 12, and you will continue to have 12, or is your intention to have more?
My intention is not to have more.
I mean, if we did, it'd only be a couple.
Okay. And then these are dump trucks, so they're hauling.
aggregate. And most of them, said they leave in the morning and they're gone. So 4, 5, 6 o'clock, and then they come back.
So there's no activity at the residence until, other than the trucks leaving and coming back.
There'll be a few pickups coming in to get on board or supplies or whatnot. But no, they're not 12 trucks coming in and out constantly.
Okay.
So just so I'm understanding this statement. If they expand, they lose their grandfather status that they have right now. Is that correct?
So any legal non-conforming use can expand up to 20%. But the expansion of area we're speaking about is 180%. So we are well over that threshold.
As far as the size of the building,
We're looking at the disturbed area.
I see. So it's the disturbed area
Because of
cannot
the
increase by
backside.
more than 20%, as opposed to 2 trucks out of 12 would be less than 20. 2 trucks on top of 12 would be less than 20%.
We're looking
That's,
at this as a site plan.
I see.
Now, if we were looking at this as they wanted to expand one of their buildings, again, that would be 20%. So think of them as 2 separate things. We're talking about the gravel as 20%. We're talking about the buildings as 20%.
Okay.
But the way this is presented, it's a brand new building, so that's a completely separate petition. It's not an expansion of the existing building. But the area of actual disturbance on the site is what we have.
So this would be a new garage to house a truck. What would happen with the old
Thank you. That's
garage?
So
Or the
the
current garage?
existing would just become a personal shop. Cars.
So it would remain, but it just wouldn't be used for business purposes necessarily.
Right. And then the new shop would be to, maintenance of store a few inside here and there. Have offices, so we get it out of the house. I want
Also, when you say that with the stormwater, they won't be required to put a retention pond in, will they?
That's something we have to review. I don't know. Because there is a possibility of that, yes, this is a large area. I mean, if we're talking that this is a 10-acre parcel and we're talking about quarter, third of it, I mean, that's a large area. It probably will need something to hold the water. What that means, I don't know. It's all gonna depend on the volumes and where we're at in the watershed, current discharge rates, and I'm gonna run through all the vocabulary I know in terms of stormwater here, but there definitely would need to be some consideration for that. What it would become, I don't know.
Can that be a dry detention?
Again, possibly. It depends on a number of factors. If that type of a structure would work in the situation.
That would be determined through the commercial site plan. That's being recommended.
Yes,
They would have to provide some kind of drainage study
correct.
of the property.
A drainage report is required as a step of the land alteration permit, a commercial site plan. So that would determine what the appropriate way to handle all this would be. It's all going to depend on where it's coming from, how it slopes, what the water table is like, what water is coming and going from the site. There's a number of factors at hand that I couldn't even begin to guess what that answer would be.
Mr. Foster?
So if they begin using the prior garage for residential use, does that affect the percentage, the expansion percentage?
And I can maybe address this. This is Gabe speaking. In the staff report, there is Exhibit B, the concept plan. They show their existing gravel with their 2 existing buildings. I had measured that area, including the driveway leading up to their residential driveway. I did not include the residential driveway. And the expansion that I measured was the new.
So to be clear on this, the other thing to consider with a legal non-conforming use is it's only granted for it as it sits. So even if we're talking, they have 11 trucks, we're keeping 11 trucks. If we're moving them out of that area, the legal non-conformance is gone.
Okay.
So we would have to do this use variance to even allow it to move, even if it stays the same size.
Got it. Okay.
So, if it's doubling in size, if it's staying the same size and moving, it's the same instrument.
I have no other questions.
Mr. King?
So really, I guess paying back off that is if they picked up what's existing and moved it, they lose that. Like if they just shifted it on the property.
Yes, if they brought in, those building moving machines just to fix that structure up and move it, the legal non-conformance is lost. That's the way the ordinance is written. It's as it is until it's otherwise changed. I mean, there's clauses in there for, if tornado takes it out or something like that. That wasn't of their own doing. But if you willingly alter your legal non-conformance, that takes it away.
So just going through, as I look at the criteria, as far as number one, I agree, any additional gravel is probably a problem to the general welfare of the community around it with the dust and everything that would additionally kick up. So I do see the concern there. Rising from petition peculiar to property, I mean, I do think it's peculiar, it's a grandfather situation. The business is not, in my opinion, changing much, other than maybe some minimal growth, it sounds like, but the same specific thing that it's been grandfathered for. It also comes to the strict application of the zoning ordinance. I'm sure you've invested in the business there. I do, as far as number 3, the staff recommendation that shall run with the land and Mr. and Mrs. Asher only. What are the thoughts from the staff as far as a succession within the family as opposed to a transfer outside the family? Are there any concerns or thoughts to that?
I guess the concerns with that would be if it's transferred, will the area that is being vacated suddenly become business? And then the business is double in size. That would be staff's concern. That's kind of why it was recommended to be as presented. Once this is done, it's done. So that's the rationale.
But as it is now, does the grandfathering apply to succession?
They can sell their property as it sits now. And so long as the use does not stop for 6 months, it could be picked up. So if they sold it to their son and he continued the operation, they could continue. But if the truck's left for 6 months, the use would then be done. Even if, the garages are there, the maintenance facilities there, if it's not being used for 6 months, it's a legal non-conformance, it's over.
So if we were to say, go forward and include the recommendation of the commercial site plan, that commercial site plan would encompass everything that you're concerned about, that they would have to meet in order to go forward. I guess if we approve it based on a commercial site plan being done and having to be followed, if they weren't willing to follow anything that came out of that, then they would be negated, correct?
Yes, just as part of your motion, I would like you to include that it would be for the IL standards, the industrial large, if that is the path you choose to take, just so that we're all clear on what, quote unquote, industrial standards means in this case.
What's Greenwood's noise ordinance?
7 AM to 9 PM, unless it's noise that is usual and customary to the type of business that's being operated there.
So we do have 24-hour business operations that they are 24 hours, so not as regularly.
Your trucks have been operating at 6 AM for how long?
5 years.
And
Yeah,
that
because
would
that
not be
8 AM
different.
is a little problematic.
Yeah, well, that'd be problematic for, our trash is picked up before 7 AM in the morning.
Some,
Lucky.
Ours is, I'm rushing to get it out there.
Glad
So
they
I was
don't.
like, I mean, that's a normal thing, it's before 7.
That thing is on the warehouse behind us, their backup alarms are going off all night. And I didn't give them.
I have just a question. Well, you talk about possibly selling to the son. If their son gained an ownership interest in the business tomorrow for any of this construction or change takes place, would he be a pre-existing owner for this?
The way it's written in there, the Ashers are named. So
You poor thing. You look.
One second, Mr. Davis. IT staff, can you mute all the dialing callers, please?
if you change the wording to, denote anyone in the Asher family, I mean, that would, I think, if I'm understanding what you're going for with that kind of question, that would alleviate some of that transition that you will see.
I have no questions.
Mr. King?
No.
We good? notices and receipts, and everything in
Yes.
order?
And a certified copy of the Unified Development Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan are also in the file.
Take a motion to accept them all into the record.
Chairman, I move that we admit all the evidence presented in regard to this matter, including the notices, receipts, maps, photographs, written documents, petitioner's application and attachments, petitioner's detailed statement of reasons, the staff report prepared by the planning department, certified copies of the Unified Development Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan, testimony of the petitioner, city planning staff, and any remonstrators and all other exhibits presented, be they oral or written, for consideration by this board in regard to this petition, and to include the testimony of those present this evening.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Peters, second by Mr. Fuller. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Take a motion on the docket itself. We're on BZA 2021-020.
All right. We need some help with this, Sean. I move to approve the this docket based on change in the staff's conditions. A commercial site plan will be required per
Large.
Industrial large standard.
Okay.
The
The second one, there shall be no truck traffic between the hours. I would change that from 9 PM to 6 AM. And then the use variance should be granted to William and Deborah Asher. Immediate family. This use variance shall not run with the land and use of the variance, so it'd be William and Deborah Asher and immediate family. Is that
Immediate family, you mean
Children,
children
Yep.
in
No
the direct
grandchildren.
line of descent?
Children, yeah, then you start pointing that out pretty good. I'd say just
immediate.
immediate first generation. You said they carry that business on. That's my motion.
Second,
Motion by Mr. Fuller, second by Mrs. Peters. Again, the conditions are: 1, a commercial site plan will be required that meets the IL standards. Number 2, there should be no truck traffic between the hours of 6 AM,
9 PM.
9 PM and 6 AM. I had it backwards here, PM and 8, 9 PM and 6 AM. And number 3, the use variance shall be granted to William and Deborah Asher and an immediate family, being the first generation. The use variance shall not run with the land. It will automatically be voided by change of ownership of the subject property outside of that succession plan. And this use variance shall not be transferable to other persons. Is that all correct, Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
So I have a motion, a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. I'll take a motion to adopt written findings of fact.
Mr. Chairman, having considered the statutory criteria, I move that we direct the Corporation's Counsel Office to draft written findings of fact regarding our decision on the variance request presented and variance petition number BZA 2021-020. Said findings to specifically incorporate the staff report and the evidence submitted into the record for consideration and adoption by this Board of Zoning Appeals as our final decision and final action regarding this petition at our next meeting.
second,
Motion by Mr. Polar, second by Mr. Peters. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. I will move on now to BZA 2021-017. Tell us, Mr. Thatcher, tell us a little bit about what that is for.
Okay, this part of it is in regard to the building primarily. We like to build an approximately 68 by 100 full-on structure, constructed metal siding to run the business. And asking for approval for gravel parking around the building for employees and
Let's go through the criteria on this one if you would. So number one, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community because
again, all tracks and conform and maintain effective CSA standards with all practices. We run a drug-free workplace that is monitored by DOT.
okay. Number two, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because
Because the majority of the property is surrounded by agricultural and commercial buildings.
okay. Number three, the strict application of the terms of zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because
We need a larger structure for contracts and space for the owners to perform work functions.
four, it is not regulated under Indiana Code 8-21-10-3 for hazard air navigation. There's actually two requests within this docket. I apologize for not pointing that out. Okay, that was the parking, it's the second one. Okay, so for number two, again, this is for the parking, gravel. Number one, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community because
Again, we will track and maintain FMCSA standards as well as our practices. The gravel area will in no way cause harm to the community.
number two, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because
There's industrial ground to the west and agricultural ground to the north. The gravel areas will be minimally visible to landscape plan implement.
and number three, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because
Well, the current zoning requires asphalt and paved services. The cost for a small business to pay this area is extraordinary.
and again, number four, thank you. The structure is not regulated under Indiana Code 8-21-10-3 for hazard air navigation. So the proposed conditions on this is for number one, that a 36-inch masonry wainscot be added to the metal constructed building, so along the base to be a little more firm. And number two, that the first one being that you obtain a right-of-way permit or a street cut permit from the city of Greenwood for installation of the driveway. Two, if the gravel surface is allowed, then the paved portion of the driveway should extend at least 955 feet deep from Griffith Road as the petitioner has drawn in the concept plan. Number three, the paved area must be frequently swept to prevent that gravel from entering the street. And number four, petitioner shall have the entire driveway parking area paved with hard surface no later than September 27, 2024. So it takes you 3 years to get that done. Okay. Mr. Davis?
Yes, so the masonry wainscot, if you do decide to move forward, when we look at our typical industrial standards, there'd be significantly more masonry and hard surfaces required. We have a limit on steel, which I believe is 20%. This is entirely steel. So that is some of the reasoning behind that wainscot. Plus with the bigger trucks and just the heavier use of the site, the base is where these buildings could be there. So that's the reasoning behind it. In terms of gravel, again, as I mentioned with the previous petition, staff is very much against gravel on this property just due to the industrial nature. No other industrial properties are permitted to develop with gravel. And it will be a little more difficult to work around with in terms of water quality. So we do believe that the whole site needs to be paved from the start.
Okay. Any additional comments to that? All right. In that case, I will close the public hearing on this one and open up to questions from the board.
I have a question of the city. I am confused as to why we're asking for a right-of-way permit for installation of the driveway. The drawings do not show a separate driveway.
There would be a new driveway installed to the north of the existing one with the requested plan. And you,
Okay, it's not in the drawings. Then, right?
It's on exhibit B.
I don't see a new driveway. I see-
Along
Wait,
along
and
the
Molly?
tree line.
And E, did-
Oh, okay, to the, on the
but
right
you-
in the
but
picture.
since you,
Yes.
since you
Okay, I couldn't
have,
see that.
as part of the previous petition, required them to obtain a and alteration permit, commercial site plan, that will be reviewed at that time, so the street cut is not necessarily required.
Okay.
That will be reviewed under that previous permit.
Okay, I just couldn't tell that on here. I'm sorry.
Any other questions?
No, good.
Mr. Fuller?
No questions, just a comment on our ballot. Under conditions, it says the petitioner's reasoning did not address building architecture.
Yeah, the
And then
condition
our-
is actually
And
more.
the condition is more the adding the wainscot.
So
They picked up-
the
they picked up the
conditions are not
summary of
correct.
that condition.
Right.
So
Both of
just,
them.
just make sure if you make a, if you make a motion to strike those conditions from the ballot and verbalize the actual conditions you check.
I guess I do have another question since that. So they're asking for gravel to be used, and I think we established in the last petition that because of water quality. They had mentioned they'd be willing to go hard surface. but, yeah,
And I guess my question becomes with the 3-year request here, Shauna, based on the last docket, what options? Is that still something we could consider to give them time to do, or?
If they have to do the site plan, to do the use, they have to meet our ordinance requirements, so they have to do it immediately. I don't think you get an additional time.
Well, then what's the condition that we're
The
given?
staff's conditions were put into this report because whenever we make a report, we understand that staff is just a recommendation, the board is the approval. So staff has recommended denial of both requests, but if the board should desire to approve either request, we wanted to give some suggested parameters to that. So while we are against both requests, we know the board has its own thought, its own will, and we do not have any vote in that, but we at least want to try and provide some guidance if that's the path we want to go.
Understood.
Well, and given the surrounding businesses that are required to pay, but again, I would defer that to the meeting the IL standards. So. Mr. Foster?
I have no questions.
Mr. King?
None.
All right, in that case, again, notice of receipts. Everything's in order.
The certified copies of the UDO and the comp plan are also in the file.
Motion to take them into the record.
Chairman, I move that we admit all evidence presented in regard to this matter, including the notices, receipts, maps, photographs, written documents, petitioner's application and attachments, petitioner's detailed statement of reasons, the staff report prepared by the planning department, certified copies of the Unified Development Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan, testimony of the petitioner, city planning staff, and any remonstrators, and all other exhibits presented, be they oral or written, for consideration by this board in regard to this petition, and include the testimony of those present this evening.
Motion by Mr. Fuller, second by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. I will take a motion on number 1, request number 1 for BZA 2021-017, which is the request to build a 68 by 100 pole barn structure constructed with metal siding to run a dump truck business.
Chairman, I recommend that we approve with the condition of using the 36-inch masonry wainscot and added to the metal constructed building for purposes of strengthening.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Peters to approve with the condition that a 36-inch masonry wainscot will be added to the metal constructed building. And a second by Mr. Fuller. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. Take a motion on number 2, which is to have approval for the use of gravel in the parking and driving areas around the new proposed pole barn structure for employee parking.
Trying to make this up. Okay, Chairman, I recommend that we approve the second request with the following conditions. And I do have one question as we go along. I'm not sure what the paved area to be swept is. What was that?
It's the existing. Any of the
So it's,
pavement.
it's the length of the driveway that's actually paved.
But if we're putting it on the side, I don't guess I understand.
So if you're passing the gravel, we want to make sure that the paved part of the driveway leading out to the street is swept, so that gravel is not trapped by the tri-axle trucks out onto the street. That is how construction sites handle it when they have gravel approaches. They have to sweep the street.
Am I able to make comment to the board before a motion to clarify?
If you need clarification.
Yes. I'm trying to
So-
figure out.
My understanding based on what we passed before was no intent to have gravel. So if that is the case, then it would be a recommendation to deny. If you do want to allow some form of gravel, then yes, you would move to approve with any conditions if there are. So that's- I just want to make sure you.
So our last one, we actually denied it.
We asked for a commercial site plan to basically say this is what it needs to be. It needs to meet these IL standards, which would be determined what they could and could
Unless
not.
somebody else tried to word that one. However,
Well, if that's the case, then none of these apply.
we're just gonna deny the.
Yeah, if there's nothing in there that you wish to approve, then yes, you would
Okay.
deny. That's the clarification I was trying to make without trying to guide anyone.
No,
Which would
trying to make
include
sure we
the
understood.
Street stuff permit.
Correct,
None of that would apply.
None of that
if we
would
just-
apply.
we just deny
correct.
the gravel area.
Mr. Chairman, I move to deny the request for the approval of the use of gravel in the parking and driving areas.
And Mr. King, since you are new to the board, just so you're aware, you will check the motion to deny. And then depending on your vote, you will check the appropriate box, whether
But I
you're.
have for the record to clear that Ms. Peters has withdrawn her initial motion
Yes.
she began.
That's what I
Okay,
said.
you
I'm
couldn't
sorry.
hear it over there.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So, okay. So there's a motion to deny number 2, which is the approval for the use of gravel in the parking and driving areas around the proposed pole barn structure for employee parking. All those in favor, oh, do I have a second? Sorry.
Second.
Second by Mr. Foster. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Mr. King, you are affirmative on the denial. Just so for procedural. Yep. Make it very confusing.
I'm sure we'll do it right.
Okay. Again, you are welcome to move forward. We will take final action in 2 weeks. You will need to work obviously with the staff to get, all the site plan and all that done. Once you get through all that, good luck to you. All right, thank you. Okay. Oh, yes, a motion to adopt.
There.
Chairman, having considered the statutory criteria, I move that we direct the corporation counsel's office to draft written findings of fact regarding our decision on the variance request presented in variance petition number BCA 2021-017. Said findings to specifically incorporate the staff report and the evidence submitted into the record for consideration and adoption by the Board of Zoning Appeals as our final decision, final action regarding this petition at our next meeting.
Motion by Mr. Peters, second by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0. All right, I know lots of folks are here for planning commission, which was scheduled to start at 7. We do have one more docket on our agenda that we will be going through here tonight. I would ask if the noise out in the lobby continues to increase, if someone would just take the opportunity to close those doors so we can hear. Right now, I think it's manageable, but as more people come in, or if more people come in, I appreciate that. All right, next up is BCA 2021-018, a dimensional variance request by Larry Siegler. Mr. Siegler at North Graham Road, reduction of the requirement to have loading facilities at least 200 feet away from a residential property. Lower that to 120 feet for construction of loading facilities along the south property line.
Now, Mr. President, if I may, for planning commission, if anyone is here for the Grand Vista East annexation, it has been withdrawn. So I just want to make that clear so that nobody has to wait through our Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to then hear that the annexation has been withdrawn. So it will not be heard. That petition is.
And which one was that, Mr. Davis?
That is PC 2021-076, the Grand Vista East annexation. It has been withdrawn. I know there was a lot of turnout for that item at the previous meeting. So I apologize for interrupting, but I did want to make that known.
And just so everybody heard that, if you're here for the Grand Vista East annexation for the planning commission, which is docket PC 2021-076, that is not going to be heard tonight. They have withdrawn it. So you are welcome to go home or wherever you need to go, and not, if you want to sit through the BZA, we'd love to continue to have you, but I know we did not want you to sit through that and then only find out later that it's not going to be heard.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Siegler, stand. Does anyone else wish to speak to this docket? Okay, all those wishing to speak, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in by our secretary.
Do you swear no penalties for perjury, testimony is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do. Okay, Mr. Siegler, approach the podium there and tell us why you're here.
Larry Sigler, with the Pearson Company. I'm here on behalf of the Sheer Property Group regarding this variance. I'll try to be right quick.
Just also your address, please.
My address is 7132 Zionsville Road, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46268. Yeah, we're here for a variance to reduce the amount of a setback between loading docks and our property line from 200 feet down to 120 feet. The reason why we're here is the hardship that we face is we have an odd shaped parcel of ground and we're trying to fit in our drainage, we're trying to fit in our building. And early on, we actually sat down with Amanda Revenue from Aspire, and then eventually we went to the RDC, we went to the city council, and the whole intent of this building was to be able to break it up into very small users. This is not going to be the Amazons of the world and the large, big distribution type centers. It was more to handle kind of local business, maybe somebody that wants a dock and drive-in and those types of users. So we actually have entrances along the front that we could accommodate, up to 8 different users. When we got into the approval process, we found out that we couldn't put docks on the southern, 200 feet of the building, or at least not 200 feet, but within 200 feet of the property line, which caused us to put our first dock so far along the building that we could no longer, we wouldn't be able to break it up into smaller users. I brought in interest of time. I'm not really gonna, I had Amanda come here and thank her for showing up. I just want you to maybe acknowledge that we did sit down with her, went over this, a lot of the smaller users, and she's here to kind of give you all the users that could be in there and why that we, it really was meant to be for smaller users. And is that, am I testimony correct?
That's correct.
So with that, I'm not here to ask for something without maybe giving something back in return. So if you look at our plan, we have there's an existing, stand of trees. We're gonna have a privacy fence. There's gonna be another wall, a retaining wall. That's gonna have some sound benefits to it. We're also gonna put extra landscaping. Now, all those items are kind of required, but they are going to be there. And then in addition, we plan to put in what you call a sound screen wall. So really a fifth barrier, if you want to call it, to try to minimize the sound that would emanate from the facility over to our neighbors. So again, we're not asking to go the entire 200 feet. And we're trying to kind of compromise on what can we live with. Is I could actually put docks closer to the end, but I wanted to kind of reduce that 200 just to 120. And again, kind of asking for something, but again, trying to give something back in return. I've got pictures of the typical type walls. I mean, there's a couple different vendors. This Avtec, and another one is ATMI. So we kind of use those kind of precast, concrete panels. We would paint it similar to building. So while the ones you see are not necessarily attached to a building, we would make ours, since the wall would be attached to the building and protrude up from the building, we would paint it to be similar to the building.
Okay. Want to go through the statutory criteria with me? You have your answers to that?
I do. I have on that on my phone.
Okay. Number one, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community because
Well, the variance if granted to reduce the required separation, it would not interfere with the public health, safety, and morals, and general welfare. The variance will allow for the design and development of an industrial building that is complementary to the surrounding buildings of similar industrial style.
Okay. Number two, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because
Our current tract is undeveloped and the proposed improvements would potentially either maintain or increase the surrounding property values. Our building meets the required minimum setback lines and additional screening measures will be installed. It's important that buffer screening and the sound deadening to be utilized is a combination of 40-foot long, 12-foot high concrete sound barrier, 12 to 15-foot retaining wall, extensive landscaping, and a 6-foot tall wooden fence along the south property line.
number three, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because
The proposed building is designed to be for flexibility to be divided up into up to 8 smaller tenants, all having the option to have loading docks in the rear. The removal of 80 feet of loading docks on the south side will result in practical difficulties to lease that southern part of the building. Based on the current lease rates, the cost of construction, this type of space would need to be occupied with smaller tenants to make financial sense.
and number four, the structure is not regulated. I assume based on the answer here, it's not regulated under Indiana Code 8-21-10-3 for hazard air navigation. Mr. Davis, can you confirm that?
Correct. We will comply with all ordinances concerning
All the conditions. So the two conditions that were recommended by staff are that the noise wall shall be made of dense concrete, thickness of a minimum of 4 inches, substantially comply with the drawings submitted with this petition attached as exhibit to the staff report. And number two, the noise wall will be painted to match the building which you addressed. So, anything else to add?
No, sir.
Anyone else with something to add for the docket?
I'll speak. The staff report was favorable. The petitioner has provided mitigation mechanisms that kind of address what the intent of the ordinance was with that separation. And the intent of the separation in the ordinance was to get that noise away from the residences. So through the buffering, through the wall, that is addressing that. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Anybody else for? If not, I will ask if there are any remonstrators. Anyone who wishes to speak opposed? Step to the microphone, name and address to the record. And he was sworn in.
You hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Victor Fair and I'm at 487 North of Graham Road. All right, first of all, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak today and to represent my family and the other families who physically couldn't be here tonight to represent our concerns that would be affected by this variance. Back in 1988, my wife Diane and I, we chose to settle on this current piece of property. We love the location due to its convenience to our respective employers. The community of Greenwood, the nature that surrounded it. The property is part of the Greenwood approved minor plot for building homes. We built our home on this property. We built our home when interest rates were 13%. I don't know if some of you still remember that, but they were as high as 13% when we built. We raised our 3 children there. We added many improvements to the property. We enjoy the company of our neighbors there. Their children, their homes, their improvements they built. Our Grand Road community supports each other and always will when help is needed. Many of us clustered around the proposed development are active within the larger Greenwood community. We work here, we do our recreation here, we attend our Sunday services here. We enjoy a neighborly connection. We frequent the local fire station there. We donate our time, our toys. We go down there and talk to those guys on a regular basis. We enjoy that community there that we've built over these years. We do our fair share of picking up the ever-increasing trash that accumulates along Graham Road. I mean, development does bring things along with it. So, we're members of the Greenwood community is what I want to establish here. Our cluster of homes all participate with the rest of you in the community. Over the past 30 years, my family and our neighbor families have invested heavily in our homes and our property. We did this because we know it's the best way to develop and grow a quality community. We all benefit from our collective efforts to improve our surroundings. It's what we do as proud homeowners. You see, for us, this has been and what we want it to continue to be is our home and our community. The place where we can enjoy family, friends, protection, and find some rest. During the past 15 years in particular, we've lived and endured some of the major surrounding developments. For the most part, taking that in stride, we knew the area would develop in time. The fact that development would and does occur has never been a primary concern of us because there's a plan and a set of guiding rules to ensure safety, improve infrastructure, and protect existing property values. Let me be clear, I'm not here standing, or any of us are not standing here against development. As long as it's done within established rules, in particular protecting family homes and their values. It brings us to the subject variance, which requests to vary from a key provision intended to protect quality of life and value of residential property adjacent to industrial development. We're intelligent people here. We understand the motivation. It's not complicated. The variance to the established rule is intended to protect, maximize returns for the investor. It's just that simple. In these cases, key consideration is and always will be, should established property owners bear a loss so that an investor can improve financial returns. This variance request to bypass a very important key rule established to maintain minimum distance, specifically loading docks, the noisiest and most active portion of such a facility, potentially all hours of the day and night. The applicant chooses to, quote, state that the current track is undeveloped and the proper proposed improvements would potentially increase surrounding property values. We know this to be misleading, especially when 3 sides of this development are residential. Residential properties simply don't benefit from industrial buildings. Again, we're not against development. That's not the point here. The point here is how is it developed, and can we hope that these rules are held to protect our values and our property. Many of us belong to neighborhoods with HOAs. They have rules and bylaws there. We feel safe to invest and trust that the value what we put there will be protected going forward. We are no different. When we built there, we built the rules that guided those principles, and we hope to maintain our values. Frankly, we've lost value over the last 15 years. It's just simple fact. There's no debating it. What we're hoping to do here is to continue to maintain what we have left in the value and the quality of life we have around our homes. When the subject land was purchased by the current owner, it was zoned agriculture. He then requested a zoning change to industrial. Myself and others stood here at that time and voiced our concerns about the impact to our community. We did not say absolutely no, because the current owner promised they would work with us to minimize the impact to our homes. Unfortunately, we never heard from him again. The building continued on its path without any input from us. We're not against development as long as it's done within established rules. We're clearly that we're in place from the beginning. I hold 2 engineering degrees. One of those is civil engineering. There are many ways this particular parcel can be developed to make a nice financial return to the owner. The current proposed development is just one that frankly could be completed within the established rules and still make a nice profit for the investors involved. We request the investors and developers to make it work within the established rules or work directly with the residential people that surround it on 3 sides to come to an agreeable solution here. None of us have been contacted and asked for input on this particular development. It would have been nice if we had been, we would have made our interests and concerns known at that time. So the reality here is that the request variance simply seeks to maximize profits at the expense of existing property owners, and that's our concern here. We've invested as well. We've invested heavily over the years we've lived there. We've made our improvements with the established rules. We as members of the Greenwood community are asking for your support to maintain our quality of home life and property values as we work very hard to build those. You see, we have no other options than to come here and appeal to your fair judgment. The developers and investors have many options of what they can do with that parcel. They chose one path. That path results in requirement of variances. I mean, they said themselves, it was a very difficult project to squeeze it all in there. Again, it's an effort to maximize, I get that, but somebody's going to suffer as a result of that, and that's why I'm here representing our surrounding property owners. All of us here in this room today have something in common at stake. We all desire to have what we work very hard to build, recognize, and protect of our community leaders. We want our homes to matter enough that they will always be considered a priority over an outside investor's desire to maximize property. We simply request that you hold to the established rules. The investor will be fine. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Ziegler, you have 5 minutes to respond.
I only have 1 engineering degree, so I feel like I'm going to be not quite up to your education, but the project is difficult because of the odd shape of it. So there's many side yard setbacks. So we have not just a side yard, left side yard, right side yard, because of the odd shape of it, and because of all the setbacks where we put the pond, where we not put the pond. It does just limit the amount of buildable space on the project. And we're not here, while we all want to maximize our profits, we're also here trying to give something in that all of the extra landscaping, all of the retaining wall, the fence, and this wall, the soundproofing wall, and again, not asking for all 200 feet to be, look the other way on. We're only wanting to decrease it from 100 or from 200 feet, to the 120. And so, again, we're trying to give something back and try to reach a happy medium here with the board.
Okay. Is Mr. Hand? Is that what? I'm sorry. Mr.
Pear.
Pear?
Mr. Chair? Yeah.
Anything, you also have 5 minutes to respond to that if you wish.
Again, I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. Again, when you take away something, you must put something back. So I think what he's saying is they're trying to get back to ground zero here. And the fact is that today there's nature there. It's quiet. And when you put an industrial building and you have 8 loading docks, it brings noise, it brings traffic, it brings backup sounds, and potentially at all hours of the evening. And they're asking to move their docks 80 feet closer to my bedroom. That's the bottom line. And I was hoping that the rules were there to help prevent and maximize the buffer that was there. Again, had we been involved in some of the design, some of the considerations, maybe there's a solution here. And I would be open to that if we can continue this and have an outside discussion here, but we haven't got to that point yet. And so I just want to make my point strong that we want our home values protected and our quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Close the public hearing. Open it up to the board.
I got one question. I mean, sure, it'd be difficult to answer with noise levels and all that, but if 200 feet, what's the requirement for buffering around property if we left it at 200 feet?
There is a 40-foot landscape, or landscape buffer required. That can be reduced to 30 feet using a privacy fence or wall. So that would be all the buffer required. And the building could stay in its current location. It's just there couldn't be docks along the stretch of 80 feet that we're talking about. The building itself meets the setbacks. It's the docks that are the issue.
So that 40 feet of buffering would be trees, shrubbery? It wouldn't even necessarily be a
Trees,
wall. correct?
landscape. If it's at 40, they don't need a wall or a fence. They can reduce it by 10 feet if they include a physical structure.
A wooden privacy fence.
So would they be in the 40 feet, would they require mounting?
Not necessarily.
So it'd just be trees and bushes, and it could be, you could see straight through to the building itself.
And it is a denser landscaping requirement, but yes, there would not be anything physical in there.
And it's not a noise buffer by any means.
So the noise level is going to be higher, even
Yeah.
though it's,
It is a noise buffer, but it's
Minimal.
it's not a wall.
how tall is this wall?
12 feet. Fence is 6 feet, then there's a retaining wall, which is about 12 or 15 feet. Then there's a sound barrier wall along the
There's 3 walls.
3 walls.
Yeah.
Yes.
Both of this.
So
The way the ground drops, there's a fence, then there's a retaining wall that's 12 feet down, to a drive, and over to another wall, the sound wall. This way the ground drops from south to north, quite a bit, it's got a lot of, so they gotta build their retaining wall up. With a fence on top, so the fence is gonna be a pretty good buffer from the building.
I'll clarify the question. Coming off the corner of the building, you can see a red line coming down towards the parking lot. That is the actual wall that's coming off the corner of the building. That's the sound wall, concrete sound wall. Then you can see the line of landscape towards the left of the page. That is that buffer landscape with a wall integrated into it. Or not a wall, a fence. So just to clarify what everybody's talking about, this is what's been submitted.
You got a 6-foot fence, dense landscaping, and a 12-foot wall.
And a third noise wall, noise barrier
Within
wall.
the
Right.
building itself. There's a third.
No more questions.
Mr. Foster?
I have questions.
Mr. King?
The sound wall, this, I guess the second wall, the sound wall, that's the 15 feet.
The sound wall that butts the building,
I'm sorry, whatever, like,
This wall
you
here.
have the fence and then,
the retaining wall.
yeah.
So 12 feet there is a.
Can I have the audience? I'd like to ask. So loud.
Close the hearing, you have to reopen it if you're going to take more, and they have to have it open administered.
Yeah, I'm sorry, public hearings closed. It's just the board, so I'll try to ask a couple more things here. Well, and I've got, I guess, comments that maybe to reiterate. So to reiterate or to clarify, the building setback is fine.
Yes.
The buffering landscape that all is required would be a dense tree shrub, 40-foot.
They have it designed as would be required. They've exercised the 10-foot reduction, so they're required to have that fence.
Okay.
So
they would
that,
do
that
30.
landscape that's there is as required.
But that fence would simply be a wooden, minimum, a wooden privacy fence.
Yes.
Correct. So how many, Mr. Siegler, how many docks are being affected? So within that 80 feet difference, is it one dock, two docks
No, I think it's 6 docks.
that would be within that 80 feet?
Yes, that we have
Okay.
to, we have to eliminate. Those are the 6 docks we would use for the smaller users.
I see it now, okay. Because when I was looking at the picture. I got you. And how many total units were there gonna be?
Well, it's a speculative building, so it will depend, but it's up to 8 we designed it
Up to
for.
8,
Up to 8.
and 6 of those docks would be within 120 feet of the,
Not 8 docks.
You can put a dock in every 12-foot panel if you choose to. But we don't plan to do so.
how many total docks would there be for these 8 units? You're saying this was,
I think we have 16 designed for the entire building. So approximately 2.
okay, approximately 2 per unit, okay. So basically, the building's 200, the first dock would be at 120 feet. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Right, and any kind of industrial business could go on this land, right? It's some industrial, correct?
I mean, with certain limitations, yes, but most of the types of users that would use a building of this format, yes. There's not much restriction on that. Ones that would require outdoor storage, that wouldn't be permitted, but most of the businesses that fit within these walls would be.
So again, they could come within 200 feet, they could have loading docks, not have loading docks within that 200 feet. They would not have to, they would not be required to do the amount of buffering that they are proposing.
The buffering is based on the zone. So no matter who took this site, this landscape was going. They have met the setback requirement in terms of building, because it's based on building height and setback. So they have met that. The requirement we're talking about is the distance from a loading dock to a residential property. And that would affect anyone who wanted to use the site. But that said, I mean, the building itself would be allowed where it is. It's the loading docks that triggers this.
And the loading docks would create some of the noise. I appreciate the effort to reduce that noise as much as possible. There was some concern about being all hours a day. Are there regulations on what hours can be operated within that?
We do not regulate business hours.
Some of those are going 24/7.
Yeah. Okay. I have no more questions. Are all the receipts and notices and everything in order?
Yes.
Certified copy of the Unified Development Ordinance and the Comprehensive Plan are in the file.
I'll take a motion to accept them into the record.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we admit all evidence presented in regard to this matter, including the notices, receipts, maps, photographs, written documents, petitioners, application and attachments, petitioner's detailed statement of reasons, staff report prepared by the planning department, certified copies of the Unified Development Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan, testimony of the petitioner, city planning staff, and any remonstrators, and all other exhibits presented, be they oral or written, for consideration by this board. in regard to this petition and to include the testimony of those present this evening.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Fuller, second by Mr. Foster. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Take a motion on the docket itself.
Chairman, I recommend that we approve the request with the conditions noted in the staff report. Number one, the noise wall shall be made of dense concrete thickness of 4 inches or greater, substantially comply with the drawings submitted with the petition and attached as an exhibit to the staff report. Number two, this noise wall will be painted to match the building.
Who's second, Mr. King? Motion by Ms. Peters, second by Mr. King with the 2 conditions from the staff report to approve. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion does not carry 3-2. So they basically will need to go back to the drawing board as far as making some changes. They can come back.
Yeah.
They won't.
Variance has been denied, so they have to. Docks, distance from the residential property.
I would suggest you perhaps work with the homeowners and come up with something that maybe can bring back to us.
Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. That is correct.
We still need to. findings of fact.
Yes. Motion to adopt or to draft. written findings of
Mr.
fact.
Chairman, in consideration of statutory criteria, I move that we direct Corporation Counsel's officer draft written findings of fact during our decision of the variance request presented in variance petition number 2021-18. Said findings specifically incorporate the staff report and evidence submitted to the record for consideration and adoption of the Board of Zoning Appeals final decision, final action regarding the petition at our next.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Foster, second by Mr. Fuller. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Any new business from the floor for the zoning appeals? Seeing none, any announcements?
There is no business filed for your next meeting.
And do we meet 2 weeks? We don't have another third week in between.
I think don't believe so.
Is there
No.
business for plan commission for the next time?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to change your meeting time to 6:45 PM to adopt the findings of fact from this meeting?
This one.
And through the chairman for the plan commission, we will begin our plan commission meeting at 7:45. Be about 5 minutes.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Or move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Board of Zoning Appeals is adjourned. Stop recording for